The sharp, stinging blow across my 6-month pregnant belly sent a jolt of terror through my entire body, causing me to stagger back against the oak dining cabinet as my mother's enraged voice pierced the room. "The first grandchild in this family belongs to Chloe. Get rid of it." But before her hand could strike me a second time, the heavy front doors slammed open and an unexpected guest stepped into the marble foyer. My mother turned, her face instantly draining of all color, her body shaking in uncontrollable panic as she recognized the powerful figure standing before her. Supreme Court Justice Harrison Croft, flanked by federal marshals, holding an active arrest warrant for financial fraud and an emergency protective order that permanently erased her life's work. My name is Phoebe Harris. To understand the terrifying madness that exploded in my mother's dining room that evening, you must first understand the twisted hierarchy that governed the Harris family for as long as I can remember. We lived in Silverwood Ridge, an affluent suburban community where social status, public presentation, and family heritage were treated as religion. My mother, Victoria Harris, was an excessively vain, controlling woman who owned a high-end luxury art and antiques gallery in the city center. From the moment my younger sister, Chloe, was born, Victoria made it her life's sole mission to worship her. Chloe was the undisputed golden child of the household. She was showered with endless praise, designer wardrobes, private tutoring, and expensive pageants, while Victoria openly groomed her to marry into one of the state's wealthiest dynasties. In my mother's mind, Chloe was a masterpiece destined for high society. I, on the other hand, was treated as a second-class citizen, an unwanted inconvenience whose only purpose was to perform household chores, stay out of sight, and endure Victoria's constant verbal degradation. Whenever I achieved top academic marks, Victoria dismissed my success as boring, while Chloe receiving a minor participation trophy was celebrated with grand family feasts. Rather than drowning in self-pity, I learned to navigate my family's cruelty with quiet, razor-sharp resilience. While Chloe spent her early 20s living off my mother's credit cards and pursuing empty influencer fame, I earned a full academic scholarship to study corporate law and forensic accounting. Over the next decade, I built a formidable, highly lucrative career as a managing director at Croft & Sterling Risk Advisory, an elite forensic firm specializing in high-stakes corporate fraud investigations, asset recovery, and federal debt restructuring. Because I knew my mother's toxic, opportunistic nature, I kept my professional success and personal wealth entirely hidden from her. Victoria and Chloe firmly believed I was merely a low-level accountant earning a modest salary in a cramped apartment. I even kept the true identity of my husband, Nathan, a secret. When Nathan and I married in a quiet, beautiful ceremony, my mother refused to attend because Nathan was an understated structural engineer who didn't fit her idea of high society royalty. What Victoria never bothered to learn was that Nathan's father was Harrison Croft, the legendary Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court and trustee of the largest charitable trust in the region.
For years, I maintained a strict distance from my family, offering them peaceful detachment while watching their artificial lives crumble from afar. Victoria's art gallery was secretly hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars due to Chloe's extravagant spending habits and Victoria's appalling business management. To keep up the illusion of wealth, Victoria had quietly resorted to forged credit applications, identity theft, and fraudulent commercial loans. Unknown to her, one of the primary commercial lenders she defrauded was a subsidiary firm audited directly by my company, Croft & Sterling. I had uncovered her illegal financial paper trail months ago, but out of lingering biological mercy, I had held off on turning the evidence over to federal authorities, hoping she would eventually change her ways. That merciful restraint vanished forever on a humid Tuesday evening in September. Victoria summoned the extended family to her grand estate in Silverwood Ridge for what she described as a mandatory celebratory dinner. Over 15 relatives gathered around her formal mahogany table. Victoria had arranged the gathering to proudly announce that Chloe had recently begun dating a wealthy real estate heir, boasting endlessly about how Chloe was destined to bring the family its first elite grandchild and secure their social standing forever. I arrived at the dinner dressed in a modest, simple maternity dress. I was 6 months pregnant with my first child, a healthy, miraculous baby girl that Nathan and I had prayed for after years of quiet medical struggles. I had stayed silent throughout the first hour of dinner, listening to my mother gush over Chloe's superficial lifestyle. But when my aunt gently turned to me and asked why I looked so radiant, I smiled softly, placed my hand over my visible baby bump, and quietly announced my pregnancy to the family. The air in the dining room instantly turned ice cold. My mother set her wine glass down so hard that the stem snapped against the crystal plate. Chloe dropped her fork, her face twisting into a mask of pure, ugly rage. Victoria stood up from the head of the table, her chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. "How dare you?" Victoria spat, her voice trembling with a terrifying, unhinged fury. "How dare you come into my house and steal my daughter's spotlight with your pathetic, low-class news?" I stared at her in total shock, keeping my hands protectively over my stomach. "Mother, what are you talking about? I am 6 months pregnant with your first grandchild. I thought you would be happy." "Grandchild!" Victoria shrieked, stepping around the table toward me like a predator. "A child from you and your nobody husband is an embarrassment to this family. Chloe is the one who is supposed to give me my first grandchild. She is the one destined for greatness. You are a selfish, jealous little snake trying to ruin Chloe's moment." My sister Chloe crossed her arms, sneering with absolute disdain. "You always try to copy me, Phoebe. You knew I was planning to start a family after my wedding next year. You did this on purpose to steal my attention." I stood up slowly from my chair, my heart pounding in my chest. "I didn't do anything to you, Chloe. My baby is a blessing, and I won't let either of you speak about my child this way." I turned to leave the room, grabbing my purse from the back of the chair. Suddenly, my mother moved with horrifying speed. Victoria lunged across the corner of the table, her eyes wide with unhinged malice. Before I could turn away, she delivered a hard, violent thrust of her hand directly into my 6-month pregnant belly, pushing me backward against the edge of the dining cabinet. A sharp gasp of pain and pure terror escaped my throat as I clutched my stomach. "Get rid of it!" Victoria screamed, her face inches from mine, her voice echoing with demonic hatred. "Do you hear me? The first grandchild in this family belongs to Chloe. You will terminate this pregnancy or leave this city forever. I will not let your low-class mistake overshadow my daughter." I slumped against the cabinet, trembling in absolute fear for my baby's safety, looking around the room at my extended family. Not a single relative stood up to defend me. My aunts looked away, my uncle took a sip of his drink, and Chloe stood there with a cruel, satisfied smirk on her face. They were all so terrified of Victoria's financial influence that they allowed her to physically attack her own pregnant daughter. Victoria raised her hand again, her fingers curled into a claw as she moved to strike me a second time. "You worthless little—" The grand double oak doors of the foyer were slammed open with tremendous force, bouncing violently off the marble walls. The sudden, thundering sound echoed through the entire mansion, freezing Victoria mid-strike. Heavy, authoritative footsteps echoed across the marble entryway. Victoria spun around, her mouth open to scream at whoever had dared interrupt her, but the words died instantly in her throat. Walking into the dining room was Supreme Court Justice Harrison Croft, wearing an immaculate charcoal suit, his expression colder than steel. Flanking him were 4 uniformed state troopers and 2 federal financial investigators from the Department of Justice. My mother went dead pale. Her eyes widened in absolute terror, her hands began shaking uncontrollably, and she took 3 rapid steps backward, clutching the edge of the table for support. She recognized Justice Harrison Croft immediately from every major news network and legal publication in the state. "Justice Croft?" Victoria stammered, her voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. What is the meaning of this? Why are federal officers in my home?" Harrison Croft didn't look at her.
He walked directly past my trembling mother, stepped over to where I was leaning against the cabinet, and placed a warm, protective arm around my shoulders. "Phoebe, my dear," Harrison said softly, his voice full of deep concern, "are you and my granddaughter okay?" The entire room gasped in unified, paralyzing shock. My mother's jaw dropped so low it seemed physically impossible. Chloe's eyes bulged as she looked from Harrison Croft to me, her fake entitlement instantly shattering. "Granddaughter?" Victoria choked out, clutching her chest as her face turned a sickly shade of gray. "What do you mean, your granddaughter? Phoebe is married to a nobody." Harrison Croft turned slowly, looking at my mother with absolute, devastating contempt. "Phoebe is married to my son, Nathan Croft, and the woman you just physically assaulted is the managing senior partner of Croft and Sterling Risk Advisory, the firm that holds the primary master notes on your entire estate." Victoria let out a breathless, horrifying gasp, staggering back as if she had been hit by a physical freight train. The realization hit her like a catastrophic blow. The daughter she had treated like dirt for 30 years was married to the son of the most powerful judge in the region and was the true executive power behind her financial lifeline. "5 minutes ago," Justice Croft continued calmly, pulling an official legal document from his leather coat, "I arrived outside your residence to escort my daughter-in-law to a private family dinner. Through the open window, my officers and I witnessed you physically strike a pregnant woman and demand the forced termination of an unborn child. Every word was recorded on body camera equipment." Harrison motioned to the federal officers behind him. "Officer Vance, arrest Victoria Harris for felony assault on a pregnant mother, attempted bodily harm, and criminal coercion." Before my mother could even scream, the state troopers stepped forward, grabbed Victoria's arms, and yanked them behind her back, snapping heavy iron handcuffs onto her wrists. "No, stop! You can't do this to me!" Victoria shrieked, weeping hysterically as her expensive jewelry rattled against the metal cuffs. "Phoebe, tell them to stop! I'm your mother! It was just a family argument! Chloe, help me!" Chloe stepped forward in a panic, trying to intervene. "You can't arrest my mother. We're high society people. Do you know who I am?" One of the federal investigators stepped in front of Chloe, pulling out a second official envelope. "Chloe Harris, you are hereby served with a federal subpoena regarding corporate tax fraud, wire fraud, and illegal asset conversion linked to the Harris Gallery accounts. Your personal bank accounts have been frozen as of 6 o'clock this evening." Chloe let out a blood-curdling scream of pure terror as her phone chimed with multiple banking alerts, confirming that her credit cards, luxury accounts, and vehicle leases had been instantly revoked. Justice Harrison Croft looked at my hysterical mother with icy finality. "Furthermore, Victoria, as managing partner of Croft and Sterling, Phoebe has officially signed off on the immediate foreclosure of this estate and the seizure of your art gallery due to $2.4 million in fraudulent bank loans you committed using forged documentation. You have 0 assets left. You have 0 influence left. And you will spend the foreseeable future behind bars." My mother collapsed onto her knees right there on the dining room carpet, sobbing uncontrollably, her face stained with black mascara, begging me for mercy as the officers dragged her toward the front entrance. "Phoebe, please, forgive me. I'm your mother. Don't let them ruin me. I'll love your baby. I'll treat you like a queen. Please." I stood tall beside my father-in-law, my hand resting gently on my stomach where my healthy baby was kicking softly, and looked down at my broken mother with absolute detachment. "You made your choice, Victoria," I said, my voice smooth, quiet, and unshakable. "You decided that your vanity and Chloe's status mattered more than a child's life. Now, you can spend your remaining years contemplating what true power looks like." I turned my back on her forever as the police escorted her out into the flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers waiting in the driveway. My extended relative sat frozen at the table, terrified, unable to say a single word as Justice Croft guided me out of the house into his private sedan, leaving my mother and sister in total, irreversible ruin. The legal and financial destruction of Victoria and Chloe Harris was complete, public, and absolute. Victoria was formally convicted of felony domestic assault on a pregnant mother and major corporate fraud, receiving a 5-year prison sentence with zero possibility of early parole. Stripped of her gallery, her mansion, and her social standing, her name became a permanent warning throughout the state.
Chloe, unable to pay her massive debts or maintain her luxury lifestyle, was forced to liquidate her designer wardrobe to pay legal fees, ultimately taking an entry-level job at a discount retail store to survive. Completely abandoned by her wealthy socialite friends and the real estate heir who blocked her number the night of the arrest. 3 months later, I gave birth to a gorgeous, perfectly healthy baby girl named Clara, supported by my devoted husband, Nathan, Justice Harrison Croft, and a true family built on genuine love and respect. Our lives flourished beyond measure. My firm expanded its philanthropic branch, establishing a multi-million-dollar foundation that provides free legal, financial, and housing protection to young women escaping abusive family environments. Walking through our sunlit home with my daughter resting peacefully against my chest, I knew that justice had prevailed, and that true strength is never inherited from toxic blood. It is built through quiet integrity, absolute courage, and the unshakable power of a mother's love. Educational lesson. This story highlights a profound truth regarding toxic family dynamics, favoritism, and the catastrophic danger of unbridled narcissism. No biological relationship gives a parent the right to physically or emotionally abuse their child. When a parent elevates one child while treating another with contempt, they create a broken, delusional reality that ultimately destroys the entire family unit. Vanity and entitlement blind abusive individuals into believing that their victims are weak and without protection. However, true power does not reside in loud threats or social posturing. It is found in quiet competence, moral integrity, and legal preparation. When accountability finally catches up with long-standing cruelty, the fall is absolute, proving that those who weaponize affection will eventually be stripped of the very status they sacrificed their character to maintain. Personal advice. If you are facing emotional or physical mistreatment from toxic family members who favor others at your expense, you must realize that you do not owe them your silence, your health, or your child's safety. Never allow an abusive relative to manipulate you into believing that their conditional approval defines your self-worth. Protect yourself and your family by establishing absolute legal, financial, and emotional boundaries, and do not hesitate to involve law enforcement or legal authorities when your safety is threatened. Build your life, your career, and your inner circle on a foundation of self-reliance and genuine love. When toxic individuals face the inevitable consequences of their own cruelty, resist the urge to save them out of misplaced guilt. Step boldly into your independence, embrace the family you choose, and live a life of unshakable peace.